You're listening to episode number 2 of the Indie Film Tribe podcast with me, your host, Angela Matamocha. Welcome. Welcome, Indie Film Tribe. Thank you so much for being with me here today. I am super excited to introduce this guest to you today. Not only is she a dear friend, but she is an award-winning actress. She is also the founder and CEO of the New Hollywood, and she'll be talking about that in a minute. And some of you might know her from Devious Maids or, General Hospital. She was actually voted one of the most something villains, one of the greatest villains. She was voted one of the most...
it was a very prestigious award.
I just think that's so great because, knowing you, you're just so not a villain. So I just love that. And you might also recognize her. Most recently, she just did NCIS New Orleans. Ladies and gentlemen, Brianna Brown.
Hi.
Hi, sweetie. Seriously, that cracks me up.
Yeah, it was I was named in People Magazine's 50th edition of General Hospital one of the best villains in their 50 years of airing. So that was very exciting.
Oh my gosh, it's just so funny to me. I couldn't even say it because you're just so not a villain. But having said that, tell me, Brianna, playing a villain and just being an actress, what do you love about being an actress? Let's just dive right in.
I love playing people that are different from myself. I love being able to create compassion through character, embodying very flawed characters and having people be able to relate in maybe a different way. I think some of the best storytelling is being able to show our shadow side and then have compassion for it, or to understand that everyone goes through trying times, and I think what's most inspiring is seeing people prevail and become out stronger. I think that's just a really a thing that we all can connect with this human experience that we're all going through.
Yeah. You mentioned the shadow side. Talk a little bit more on that. You like playing characters and showing their shadow side. What is that?
Well, I've had the luxury of playing a handful of villains or people that were not necessarily good people.
Aha.
And I think especially for women, there's an idea that women should be very perfect and should play out this ideal role. And I think women hold themselves to a standard of having to be perfect for various reasons. So I think it's really neat to be able to show the beauty and flaws and how people are all learning. They're all evolving and they're learning along the way. I just recently learned about this term. It's a Japanese term called wabi-sabi. I think that's what it is.
Wabi-sabi.
I'm 90% sure that's what it's called. But what this term means is that in the Japanese culture, when something is like a plate is broken, they don't just necessarily throw it away. They sometimes will add gold to it, to the edges, and put it back in, and that there's a real appreciation for the flaws and the journey. And I think in our culture, we want everything to look and stay perfect. It's why there's such an obsession with Botox or, let's stay pristine, instead of embracing that the journey that weathers us is beautiful, right? Exteriorly, internally. And I think if we as a culture can get away from everything being new and disposable and trying to hold on to that which is inevitably going to change, and instead grow and appreciate wisdom, then to me, that's the kind of storytelling I wanna really help create and embody, and it's a more realistic reflection of what's going on in the world.
beautifully said, and so true. And you hit on this point that I kind of want to dig a little bit deeper about women, and especially women in Hollywood, and the need to feel pristine, to feel perfect, to do the Botox, the boobs, or whatever it is. You have been working in the industry for such a long time. What has that been like for you? And have you ever felt like, well, God, well, maybe I should do something,
Oh my God, of course.
right?
Well, it also depends on your casting. So, being in the casting that I'm in, because people are very like, oh, if you look a certain way, that's the type of person you should play. And I remember when I first started, I was really kind of shocked by that because I saw myself as like a quirky character actress. And while I can play that and have played that, that's not necessarily what people go to when they think of me. So I had to learn how to play like the cheerleader and the perfect girl and a woman who's a gold digger and a stripper and all these things that I'm from Minnesota, you know. I I was a good Christian girl, you know, like I definitely wasn't a prostitute, you know. So all these things that which is neat to be able to, like I said, play these shadow sides, play these people that are flawed and who are trying to, you know, figure themselves out. And but there, of course, is an incredible pressure, and there's an incredible pressure as you get older as to what you should or shouldn't do to try and get work or keep work. And you know, I've seen it work positively and negatively for people. I've seen people do things to themselves and start working more, and then I've seen those same people continue on doing stuff, and then they stop working because they can only play a certain type of role, and that ages out at a certain point. So I think it's a real fine balance. And I had several much older actresses, one being Barbara Bain, who I think is just an incredible, beautiful woman inside and out. She's the first woman to win 3 Emmys in a row, and as an actress. And she directed me in this project. And she said to me, watch your calories and don't touch your face.
Wow.
And then I had another woman on General Hospital. We were in like a fan, it was a big fan event, and we were standing in line, and she turned to me and she said something similar to, she's like, do something that's grounding. And she was really into pottery. And she said, do something else that's grounding. Don't just have it be about acting, because it's not a grounding thing. You need to have something that grounds you in this crazy business that's consistently inconsistent. And I mean, that was my interpretation of it. That's what I call it, consistently inconsistent. And she said the same sort of thing. Watch your calories, but it wasn't like be obsessive about it. It's just like, just pay attention to how you take care of yourself. And then she said again, don't do anything to your face. And a woman who you could tell had been probably like the sexiest person on the show 30 years ago, walked up, and she looked crazy. She looked crazy.
Because
she had done too much, and it just inevitably it shows. I don't know. It's a fine line, and I'm not to say that I wouldn't do things along the way, but it's a really fine line, especially if your intention is to play all sorts of different types of characters, right? So if I want to play a blue collar worker, I'm not gonna look like it, or a period piece. It's not going to look right if I have, you know, D-size fake boobs and Botox all over. It's just not going to, you're going to be like, you don't look Victorian.
Yeah.
Or you don't look like you could be from, you know, from that period. So it just depends on what you really want. Like if your intention in being an artist is it about being beautiful, then maybe that's the right way to go. But if your intention is as an artist, is to really express character and embody different types of roles, then I think you have to, you know, embrace the wabi-sabi of it all. And the opportunities that arise when you get older. Like, I mean, I remember in my 20s being like, when I get older, then I can get like the better roles.
Wow.
You know? So I think that that's a journey.
Absolutely. And you talked about having something grounding, how that lady said to you to have something grounding. And to me, it sounds like your nonprofit, the new Hollywood, must be something grounding to you. And I've got to say, that's one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on today. As you know, Indie Film Tribe is all about creating socially conscious content, and our mission
Mhm.
and purpose is completely in alignment with the new Hollywood mission and purpose. So please tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, well, the New Hollywood started in 2006. So it's been around for, this will be going into its 12th year, which is crazy. And I founded it. I'm the founder and I'm the CEO. I have other people that, of course, help run the organization. And it originated as a goal setting group because I had a hard time finding my tribe in Los Angeles. I felt like the women that I was going up against were very negative and competitive. It felt like a heightened version of high school. And the men that I was meeting had, for the most part, different, their interests in networking with me were for alternative reasons. So I didn't necessarily feel safe. And, I ended up just slowly meeting really interesting women along the way and creating this tribe. It's like, let's support each other. And that was also just a very different paradigm shift from what I had experienced in Hollywood, because for the most part, it's kind of like we're all so competitive and we're trying to get the next thing and not necessarily recognizing like, well, this one might not be meant to be mine, and it may be meant to be someone else's, and we may end up working together on the next project, or all of these things. And I'm a big believer that I think the teamwork, you can rise together as a group, and you can be much more influential. So it started off with a lot of goal setting, and then it evolved to a charitable element. And now, 12 years later, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we are dedicated to supporting socially conscious storytellers and change
Yay!
makers. Yes, and change makers. So that's exciting because I feel like the two definitely go hand in hand. And we really want to our intention is to inspire everyone to rise higher and to shine brighter and to give back. And we have branches in the women's community. And last year we formed an LGBT branch with Kit Williamson. And this year we are forming a men's branch. So it'll be really neat to see what this next decade creates. We have a big mentorship program event that we are collaborating with Gina Davis Institute on Gender in the Media this year, which will be, I believe, in February or March. And then we're going to have a big goal mid-year reboot. So if that's something of interest to stay in the loop about, you can go to our website, which is thenewhollywood.org, sign our little pledge page, and then you'll get our quarterly newsletter. We don't bombard you. But the stuff that's in there is very inspiring, and it hits on the 4 pillars of our organization, which is goal setting and support, continued education, and then giving back, charity. So I just feel that people within the entertainment industry have an ability and a platform to be able to really highlight what we want to focus on. And I feel like oftentimes it's highlighting things that are not necessarily helping our world. And I do believe that and art is not just a reflection of life, but oftentimes life reflects art. And I think that's very prevalent with people embodying a lot of the values of reality TV, which is so funny because nothing about it's real. So I think that we as socially conscious storytellers have the opportunity. We have an amazing opportunity to be able to highlight that which is important. And I think we have not just an opportunity, but we have an obligation to sprinkle in things of value, to not just tell stories just because this is a story that'll just get made and make money. We can think bigger than that. We can still do that, of course. You want to make sure that it's, your work is able to be seen in the biggest platform that you can, depending on what your story is. But there's always room for things to have a little bit more heart and more depth. And part of why I feel so passionate about the New Hollywood is I really want to continue to lift up people who have a much stronger purpose within the entertainment industry, because I feel like that we can continue to put out really strong ripples of change. And it's just about little
Absolutely.
ripples, little ripples, little ripples, and big
Absolutely.
ripples.
Yes. Yes. And you are just speaking my language, lady. And one of the things that I love about this new element that you've just, I think you injected this into the new Hollywood maybe last year, where you are supporting young filmmakers. Will you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, well, the LGBT branch started a mentorship program for socially conscious LGBT filmmakers. So that is in its beta testing stage. We're figuring out all the ins and outs of that, but that's really neat. And then the last couple of years, the New Hollywood has given out an Emerging Voices Award. So that's been cool. I actually have a call, interview, mentoring call after this call with a recipient from last year. So I think it's just a really neat opportunity. And that's kind of why we're also taking it to the next level with the Gina Davis Institute on Gender in the Media, that event, because that we're going to be able to, both of our organizations have such a desire for people to be involved, and we're going to be able to help mentor a lot of people in a really neat way in that event.
It's just so exciting, and I am just so inspired by the way the new Hollywood has grown and what you've been able to do with it, and other elements that you've been able to interject within the new Hollywood, where you're not only shining a light on women, but now you're expanding to LGBT youth, to socially conscious filmmakers. I mean, it's just so amazing. I just want to thank you and acknowledge you for being a woman in this industry that has taken the time and the focus to work on something that has purpose, to work on something and create something that is bigger than just you. Do you know what I mean? That is so important and so vital. So I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge you for that, to thank you for that, because, girl, you are making a difference, and I'm just so grateful that you are doing this type of work. So thank you for that, Brianna.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel that, I believe we all have incredible gifts inside of us. I believe all of us do. Some of them are untapped, some of them are not yet, like fertilized enough or watered. And I think if we can all help support each other into finding those gifts and having them emerge, and not being afraid to shine bright. That's part of why we say, to rise higher and to shine brighter. It's okay to shine bright, because that inspires other people to do the same, and to not let fear and just, to inhibit your purpose.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What is it that you love so much about the new Hollywood and having created it? How has this impacted your life as an artist, as a woman in this business?
Well, I think two big things come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
One is it has made me a better business woman. And I think it's very important for artists to recognize that once you get paid, you are a business person. So it's really important to learn the ins and outs of the business, and to not, just because you know the ins and outs of the business doesn't mean you can't fudge the rules or go about it in a different way. But as my friend Roger Wolfson, who I think is just a prolific writer and human being, you need to know the rules of the game to play it better than anybody else. And when you know that, then you can start swimming with the sharks and changing where they go. I like that analogy, even though sharks usually swim by themselves. In my mind, it's hammerhead sharks because they swim in packs, but that's just little Brianna, who was obsessed with sharks. So, I think that you have the opportunity to help shift the way things go. So I think that's a big thing, is for myself, is learning how to be a better businesswoman, communicate in a different way, deal with conflict in a different way, which I think has been amazing, because I've learned as an actress that, having a great technique and knowing how to act is wonderful, but it's kind of just the baseline. You better know how to do that, because especially as the older you get, you're just competing against people who are more and more experienced and more talented. But the real trick of having longevity is, how do you communicate? How do you come across? What is your reputation? What is your reputation? And it's really important for young girls to not go about it in the smoke and mirrors way that you see. I've seen girls do that, and they just get eaten up and spit out in this town. Putting out their sexuality to get work, or I mean, a girlfriend of mine who's now a very successful writer, she and I have talked about maybe even writing things about this, because we both came out at a time where we were very young in Hollywood, and there was just a lot of people who wanted to take advantage, wanted to take advantage of young girls. And a lot of those girls become drug addicts, or they get distracted from their dreams, or they don't realize that they're playing with fire, and people that don't care about, how much they get hurt in the long run. So I think especially for young girls, and there's just not enough mentorship where it's like you need to focus on your craft. You need to find a good community. Be careful who you surround yourself with. I mean, you are who you surround yourself with, period. End of story. And if everyone you're working with at your day job is doing drugs and getting drunk all the time and going and doing whatever, and they're like, I'm an actor, I guarantee you in 5 years, they will not be. Or they'll still be in the same place. And so with the New Hollywood, it created a beautiful support of, I want to be around like-minded people who have a bigger purpose, who want to support one another, and who are focused. My first decade of being within the entertainment industry, I was laser focused. While most of the girls I knew were going out to clubs and, going and dating, trying to date celebrities and doing whatever, hanging out with all these producers to try and get famous. Like, I was, not that I didn't ever go out to clubs or I didn't meet celebrity, but I was so focused on, and I didn't have time, because every evening I was rehearsing for my auditions the next day. I was having to make sure I was getting up at 6 a.m. to go work out, so that I could be auditioning all day. And I was in 2 to 3 classes a week. I was, I was coaching on everything. I didn't have time for that crap. And that's the difference between, how you focus in your 20s defines your 30s. And in your 30s, for men and women, this first 5 to 7 years of your 30s, it's really going to determine what your life looks like. You don't get the same opportunities in your 30s that you do in your 20s when you're young, and in your early 20s. Your later 20s, you stop getting the same opportunities for a lot of the time. But how you use those 30s, and especially at that time when you're like, maybe you want to have a family, or you want to be in a healthy relationship, and all you've done is floated around from something insignificant to insignificant. You don't necessarily have the tools. You may not be ready for something significant. So it's using your 20s. There's this great TED Talk called your 30s. Like, I think it's called, like, your 30s are not the new 20s. It's this beautiful thing, basically saying, like, your 20s are so important, and we've taught our culture to just, be able to try and learn and explore in your 20s, which is important, but there needs to be a really strong focus, because what you learn in your 20s completely defines the trajectory of the rest of your life. And I think that being in the New Hollywood and being around like-minded, supportive people, it has helped me to make leaps and bounds exponentially, because I was focused on what I really wanted, and I wasn't getting distracted by all the smoke and mirrors that is Hollywood.
That is such sound advice, and so true, because I know I have definitely seen it myself. And I can imagine, I mean, I'm from LA, so for me it is what it is, but I can only imagine for someone that's in their 20s coming to Los Angeles for the first time, they're surrounded by all these clubs, all these events, all these things to do that ultimately may or may not, probably may not help them at all with their careers. So I think that is such a solid foundation that you built up for yourself in that focus, in that laser focus, and knowing what you want. What would you say is the top 1 or 2 things in making sure that your goals happen? To people that are listening, whether they're trying to write a screenplay, direct a movie, get in the acting industry, what is it that you've seen in all your experience of leading this goal group are the top couple of things that people do, and when you really see their goals manifest?
Well, I'm a big believer that the internal work creates the outer result. I see people, they work hard, and it's like they're a gerbil in the gerbil wheel. And you're like, well, great, but you're not, there's either a belief or you're not learning from your mistakes along the way. So there are 3 books that I think are just amazing, and I've recommended them over and over and over again. One is The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. It's a 12-week program. I highly recommend it. Do it with your friends. Find people who are like-minded. Really do it. And it really gets you in touch with your creativity, and it makes you think about what your beliefs are. And there's a whole section on affirmations, which I remember when I first did it, I was like, that's baloney. And then I realized later that what you say to yourself really defines what you create in your life. So that is a huge one. The second one is a book called Overcoming Under-Earning, and that's by Barbara Stanny. And I think that most artists have a lot of limiting beliefs as to how much they deserve to make. And here's the deal. If you think it's bad to be making money as an artist, or if you believe that that money's bad, then you'll never let yourself be a series regular on a television show. If you don't believe that you should be making high 6 figures, if you feel like that's an impossibility, then you're more than likely never going to you're more than likely going to self-sabotage when you have those opportunities. So there's internal work that needs to be done, and reframing around abundance, and around the fact that the more money you have, the more influence and you can give. So usually it goes hand in hand. If you have negative thoughts around money, there's usually a shame around that. So I'm actually co-writing a book about money with 3 other women because of these things that I've learned in the goal group, and with goal setting, and seeing this as a common theme with a lot of artists. So Overcoming Under-Earning by Barbara Stanny, I feel like she does a phenomenal job in discussing that. And then thirdly, there's a book called You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And I feel like she also has really beautiful, impactful things. And you'll see that in the Venn diagram of these 3, there's a lot in the middle that makes sense. But I do believe that the internal work changes the external result. And I think if you can be peaceful and really on purpose internally, you then will be making really authentic choices, and I think that also within the industry, you have to recognize that at a certain point, you don't go from like, hire me, hire me, hire me. At a certain point, it evolves to where you're like, I'm the CEO of my business. I have a corp. I'm as an actor, so I need to make those decisions. And then you have to continue to pivot and then start producing projects, or even prior to that, producing your own projects, so that you have longevity from decade to decade, because very few actors have longevity from decade to decade. Most need to pivot.
Will you talk about that, about self-producing? I see actors more and more doing it, and I know for myself, as you know, you are co-executive producing my feature film right now. You produced your own projects. I know for myself, I wish I would have started this sort of path earlier. What do you have to say to actors that are maybe not sure about self-producing?
As an actor, you're choosing a non-linear career. And there is no rhyme or reason to a lot of it. It is, some people are incredibly talented, barely work. And some people who are not as talented work nonstop. So there's that. And it's really important, especially if you feel like you're having, there's a lot of roadblocks or hurdles along the way. It's really important to create opportunities for yourself, to not complain to your reps about why you're not getting work. Instead, take personal responsibility and say, cool, what can I do? If I'm the CEO of my own business, what can I do to create opportunities for myself? And then enroll them, get them on board to be excited about it. Right. As an actor, the baseline is know how to act.
Right.
Keep your skill set up, know your craft. Don't get locked into being in the same acting class for too long. I think that's a real, if you're in a tribe of people and everyone's working and this is just where their home base in between jobs, cool. If you are the best person in your acting class, find a new class. If you are not the best person in your acting class, you need to work 3 times harder. So it's, because you're not even at the same level of the people that are actually booking jobs. So you got to recognize where you are on the playing field, right? Like, are you on varsity starting, or are you literally like at the park kicking the ball around?
Right.
And there's a lot of places in between. And most people are not aware of where they're really at and how difficult it is to get to that next level. So it's working smart, not hard, because I think a lot of people work hard and don't get in the right. It's working smart. And then learning business tools along the way. And the best way to do that is ask people who know more than you. Asking for support authentically asking for support, and knowing that then you will then help others when you get, everyone wants to help those who have a bigger purpose that want to help other people. If it's just about being a mogul or being, if it's all ego, I know I make little effort to help those people because their purpose is just narcissistic. And that's not interesting to me.
And again, you are speaking my language, lady. This is why I have you on. Brianna, this is sort of just a fun question for philosophical fun I like to ask. Do you believe that you were put on this planet at this particular time for a specific reason, or do you feel that it's just random?
No, I think there's a bigger purpose.
There definitely is. And again,
I don't always remember that. Which I think is the bigger thing, right? Remembering that.
Thank you so much for being with us here today, Brianna Brown. And just one more time, if people want to follow you, find you, learn more about your projects, about the new Hollywood, where can they find you at?
Okay, well, my official website is Brianna, BRIANNA -Brown, like the color.com. My nonprofit, The New Hollywood, is thenewhollywood.org. I'm on Twitter at Brown Brianna. I'm on Instagram, Brianna.Brown __. I don't know why. And then I have like a private... I don't know why. So there's too many Brianna Brown. And people were impersonating me. It was bizarre. Anyway, that's been a whole other thing on social media. So, and then I have Facebook. So you're going to Brianna Brown.
Thank you so much, Brianna, for being with us today, for being such a light. Thank you, Indie Film Tribe, for hanging out with Brianna and I today.
And my dog and random people in the background.
It's all good, girl. It's all good. Until next time, guys.
All right. Bye.
Bye.